Hey everybody, Frank Scapitici here, owner of Grayline Investments. I'm here with my main man, Carlo. We chat every single Thursday, talk real estate, talk about wholesaling. Carlo, how are you doing, man?
Doing good, man. Doing good. I know weather has been kind of an issue for a lot of places across the country. I live in the Washington, D.C. area, and we're starting to get some decent weather. It's been about 60 degrees, so it's just been nice. I was just talking to you beforehand. I haven't been outside of my house today, so I'd like to get out and enjoy some of that weather. I was able to go for a run yesterday, which I haven't been able to do like the week prior.
Yeah, so we're capping this session today at 25, 30 minutes so Carlo can get outside before our last meeting of the work week, because we meet 4:30 Eastern every week as a company. How'd you run? If you haven't ran for a couple of months, how'd you do?
Honestly, it was terrible. Like, I'm not even going to say. One thing I will say is I ran a decent distance. I went for a 4-mile run, which is for me is a decent distance. I think normally I'll run about like 3 miles. So I pushed myself a little, went for 4. My pace wasn't great, but it was the first time I ran in a while. So I was just telling myself to finish. Like
Don't worry.
Sometimes you run, like sometimes I'll go out, run far. And if I'm out, like I don't want to find myself in a position where I'm going to like start walking back. Like I never want to be that guy. So yesterday there were some times where I'm like, holy crap, I might start walking, but I feel like a lot of it is mental. Like just keep one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
Eventually, 2 hours later, I finished it. Any
endurance like exercise to me is you're going to be fighting demons at some point, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Question though, you were in the Army, right? Anyone in the armed services or DOD would like this question. What was your personal record for the 2-mile?
Oh God. Again, I'm not for those that know me, I'm more of a sprinter. I've been fit for most of my life, but I'm more of a sprinter. So my best time isn't great, but I remember my best time was 12:50. And I was like in the absolute tip top shape of my life. Like, I don't think I would ever maybe even get within a minute of that unless I like really trained for it. But my best was, if I remember correctly, it was like 12:45, 12:50 area.
Okay. Still max the APFT. Got it.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. Probably the same thing with you, like at West Point or while I was playing football, I just struggled. Like I would put my heart and soul into a run and finish in like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's funny, like after you kind of move on from football and that kind of training, the running just seems to get better when you can kind of focus on it more.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. I felt that pain. Cool. So today we're talking about markets, what the best markets are in real estate, how to pick them. And I think you got a little bit of background.
Yeah. I mean,
some questions.
I'll start this one off. You know, for those who have tuned into multiple of our episodes, it's normally Frank asking me questions. Last week we changed it up. I asked him a couple questions. So we're going to kind of keep riding that wave. I'll ask him some questions and then he'll bounce them back to me. But the topic, like Frank mentioned, is, you know, how do you decide what market you want to enter in if you're an investor, or if you're an investor who plans on operating in multiple markets, how do you decide, you know, what's the next one? Yeah. So just straight up, just a very generic question for Frank. What is the easiest place to pick up houses, or what do you look for in terms of where you want to pick up houses?
Well, I think it's the answer is, in my opinion, is that it depends. For us at Grayline, we're looking for places where we can pick up houses at a discount, because primarily we wholesale, and when you wholesale, you need acquisitions to be able to get houses. I mean, it's the lifeline of our particular company. So you're looking for areas where your avatar or your motivated seller will be there in a relatively high population, or high population relative to others.
Mm-hmm.
But the areas that are still have enough population, like we cap it at like 150,000 and above population in the cities we target. Once you get below that, the markets can get a little thin, because we still want cash buyers to be there, right?
Right.
So we don't want to be too austere or too rural. But we have found that the areas that it's easiest for us to put homes under contract, homes that can be rentals or flips, and then we can get to cash buyers, are cities that have a really high proportion of absentee owners, or what we call in the business tired landlords, right? So people that are out of state, they're emotionally detached from the house. They don't live there as their primary residence. we find that if we're able to find cities that are doing okay, but have a large population of those, that's our sweet spot. So I tend to look at cities from where can we thrive, where can our acquisition team thrive, and we try that out. So that's generally my answer.
So it's not, markets aren't like a one size fits all, or there's one that's good for everyone. It really sounds like it kind of depends on your business and your strategy.
Yeah, right. So we posted this in the group earlier, and Ryan answered, I look for job growth, population growth, and a lot of the macro measures that indicate a city is doing really well. And he's right? Like I gave a different answer, but Ryan is, for his strategy, is probably correct, right? Mm-hmm. If you're looking to buy an asset and hold it for 10 years, 20 years, it's really good if that's in a city where the tide's rising, right? The tide raises all boats. So he's right. Like cities like Phoenix, parts of Florida, Austin, Texas, like those cities are probably going to continue to do really well. And if I wanted to own a house for 10 years and hold on to it for a while, that's a great place to be. You can make hundreds of thousands of dollars doing that. But in our business, we value cash flow from a business perspective, cash in the door every single month. So we can pay employees, pay our staff. And homes that are heavily traded that are more like rentals tend to be better for us.
Gotcha. So with our strategy, and I know you've kind of talked about this and answered this already, but like for us, where would you say is the easiest place to sell and why?
Yeah, honestly, the first place we ever went was Killeen, Texas, and it might still be the best place. And it's already flooded with wholesalers, so I'm not nervous about anyone listening to this and jumping into the Fort Hood, Killeen, Coppers Cove, Harker Heights markets. There's already big players that are there. New Western's there, Nick Perry, whatever. And there's a ton. It's a huge Army base, right? So there's a ton of transient employees. We were both in the Army, so we know the drill. Right. A lot of people that rent, a lot of people that buy houses on VA loans, and then they go to a new base, and then they leave their house behind, right? And those people just tend to have either limited equity, so they're subject to, I think, in those markets, if that's your acquisition strategy, it tends to work really well. Mm-hmm. And then those military gentlemen and ladies end up retiring 20 years down the road, and they're like, hey, let me liquidate my properties, right? I want to head off into the sunset and play golf. And they limit their management burden, and a lot of them sell their houses to wholesalers. Yep. And that's where we come in and scoop it up. And that's kind of what makes these rental markets work. Yep. Like you think about the wholesaler, we're kind of like a key cog in these Midwest and rental cities, right? Like the tired landlord is like, you know what? I don't want to fix this house up one more time. I'd rather just get rid of it. I don't want to fix the roof. I don't want to do the kitchen, right? We come in, we buy it at a little bit of a discount. We transfer it to the new, young, full of whatever, and vinegar landlord, and they flip it up and they turn the houses over. That's kind of the cycle of life in those markets.
Yeah. And, they're definitely looking for our assistance in a lot of cases. It's funny. I spoke with one of our mastermind students a couple weeks ago, and he kind of brought up, like, do you guys feel like, is there any ethical issues behind, where you pick your markets? Do you feel like you're targeting people who are under, that are in bad situations and taking advantage of them? And like, I brought it back to, because I was on acquisitions and I'm actually talking to these tired landlords. And a lot of the times they're like, I'm so glad you called me. Yes, if you can buy this place and I don't have to put any work into it, like, you would be saving me so much. So you could look at it, both ways. You could look at it like we're targeting and taking advantage. But in my experience and the conversations that I had, we were actually helping a lot of these landlords out of situations they didn't want to be in anymore.
That most sellers, right, are in some situation where a cash buyer is going to really help them. Like the home can't appraise, and they need to put work into it, right? That's one scenario. Foreclosures, liens are another scenario, or pre-foreclosure. They need help, right? Right. There are some situations where you run into, though, as you know, where a seller will say, man, that price you offered me is kind of low. What if I just list this on the MLS?
Right, yeah.
And I would say you can. Yeah. And they're like, well, do you think I'll get more money? I'm like, there's a higher probability your cash payout will be higher. I'm offering a convenience. You can almost do that as a fee. I know with this price, I'm taking this down, because we buy houses too. Like we generally can, We just didn't sell a property last week that we bought, right?
Right.
I'm like, fine, we'll buy it. So we know we can close. I'm honest with them, man. When I used to talk to them, I'd be like, yeah, you can list it on the MLS and maybe make a little more, but I'm here right now. What do you want to do?
Yeah, no, that's very good. And I would do something very similar. I would tell them, yes, absolutely. But like you said, what we're offering, we're not offering to buy you or buy your house at the best price. We're offering a service. We're offering ease and comfort. And, we're not going to be the right fit for everybody, but there are a lot of tired landlords out there that are looking for exactly what we can provide. So you just got to keep calling until you find those landlords.
Yeah. A couple other markets I think I'll name off that are similar to Killeen. Killeen's been really good. I think Fayetteville, North Carolina is a city that's got tons of absentee owners and a ton of leads you can pick up if you're a wholesaler. But that market also has some appreciation too. So I really, really like that city. Clarksville, Tennessee is another one. And Pensacola recently has been pretty awesome.
We're finding some success there.
And if you look at all those cities, they kind of fall into that 150,000 to 300,000 population. They have a high population of absentee owners. We've seen as we've moved to more and more cities that even though one might be in Florida, one's in Texas, one's in North Carolina, they do have some similar qualities. And like I kind of repeated myself, but the tired landlord has been the persona that's tied it all together, at least for us. Definitely.
So, we've been operating as Gray Line for not quite a year yet. We're almost getting there. But just thinking back to when you first started analyzing and deciding on what markets to choose a year ago to now, what are some of the biggest learnings that you've come up with, or maybe some of the mistakes that you made in the beginning that you could share with some of our listeners out there?
Well, at the beginning, to be honest, we were just like, what markets are we familiar with? And we just went there. There was very little rhyme or reason to what we were doing. We got lucky, to be honest, with our first one or two picks. But what I've learned is this. If you're just starting out, like we were, going into a super competitive market where there's tons of appreciation, you just might have to go into that with eyes wide open and just know, like, you might get leads. You might get 20 leads, might get 30 leads. But you have to accept that conversion might be low, right? We went to Colorado Springs, one of the fastest growing cities in the country. Everyone there has equity in their house. You'd have to, if you bought your house 5 years ago or more and you don't have equity in the house, that means you destroyed it or you way overspent, right?
Right.
Possibly so. Everyone has equity. So they have options. They can refinance out. They can list their home in the MLS. It'll move like that, right? Unless there's an underlying issue.
Yep.
So what happens is, we would call people and say, are you interested in selling your house? A lot of them would say yes, but then we would almost get none of them to close, right? And as a virtual wholesaler, you have to accept, right, in a super competitive market, you're going against a ton of other wholesalers, a ton of agents that are doing off-market and on-market deals. They're trying to meet these sellers in person. They're showing up at their house, right? They're getting way more letters, like way more outbound communication. So how are you differentiating yourself? And when we started out, we were not, right? We weren't experts at all the sales tactics or our messaging.
Yeah.
And we didn't do well, right? So I think my approach is like cut your teeth in investor-friendly markets if you're doing direct-to-seller marketing. And then I think you can over time graduate to getting to the more competitive, more difficult markets after you've honed some of your skills. That's kind of how I look at it. If I was on the buying end, like I was a cash buyer, I'm just looking to invest, I probably would pick a city though with a little bit of appreciation, like the Springs, like low tax. You might not cash flow like you do in Killeen or some cities in the Midwest, but if I'm as an investor, I really like that my equity is increasing because if you're getting 4 to 6% appreciation on a house that's worth $300,000, over a 5-year period, it's really hard to make that much money in cash flow.
Yep.
That's tens of thousands of dollars.
Very good point.
It's not easy to find a property or a single property that can cash flow that much. So, but maybe that's the gambler in me. I got a little bit of a gambling streak.
Yeah. Diamond hands always.
Yeah. Diamond hands.
Gotcha. Okay. So we've talked about, absentee ownership and tired landlords as being a major data point. We've talked about population growth, job growth. Are there any other characteristics about a certain market that maybe aren't as popular that you're aware of?
things that are not as
And
hot.
there might not be an answer for this because I don't know. I'm actually asking this out of curiosity.
I think, I mean, I try to look at really only a couple numbers. Population isn't big enough for us to have success there. Absentee owners, like I said before, tired landlords. Sometimes we'll look at population of cash buyers, just to make sure that there's enough of them, to keep us fed if we're moving into wholesale. And that usually gets us our answer. If that didn't work out, I guess I would start looking at the other macroeconomic factors we talked about before, population growth over time and all that stuff. But it's usually one of those things that I just mentioned that makes us decide. The only other thing I actually should mention though is referrals. Like other wholesalers will sometimes say, "Hey, like maybe take a look at this. We've had a lot of success here." And I like that because if you take someone's reference,
referral as in they are referring a different market, or
they'll say like, "Hey, like this market's really good." Like someone gave me some town in Georgia that's south of Savannah, and I was like interested in looking it up, and the metrics actually looked really good. So someone referred something, and I was like, "Okay, I'll check that city out." And then that's also good because then if you need boots on ground in that city, at least you know someone that can like, "Hey, that contractor's good there,"
Right.
Like you can. This title company in that state's good. At least you have some help, I guess. But I don't get too sophisticated with our market selection. We used to be more complex, actually, but we're simpler now.
Gotcha. No, it's interesting. You mentioned cash buyers because for me on the disposition side, I take our deals and I look for cash buyers or investors to buy it. So I'm not really involved in the process of when we pick new markets, but when we do pick new markets, some of the first things I look at is what do the cash buyers look like in that market. So cash buyers are just important in all aspects of real estate, whether it's acquisitions or dispositions, for sure.
So I have a question for you. If you're you leave Grayline, you're running your own wholesale company, would you recommend, and you're starting from scratch, how many markets would you operate in?
I mean, if I'm starting from scratch, I probably start in like one or two, very simple, kind of pretty similar to what Grayline did. Probably a military town. We talked about a lot of the benefits of military towns. Even in terms of the renters, I'm sure everybody knows this, but like if you're getting military renters, they're getting BAH. So that's just like an extra detail that gives you some peace of mind, is knowing that you'll have tenants who are getting a specific allowance for their rent. But that's probably where I'd start is somewhere, I know you said, it's very competitive. So maybe not Killeen if I was by myself, but maybe like a Tyler, Texas, maybe something like a little bit smaller, but still has some of those same characteristics.
Yeah, I agree. I think one or two, there's one thing I will say is I think it's common that people will jump markets too quickly. We also, I think, did this at the beginning. We would like hit a city and then really not follow up very much or do a lot of drip and jump to the next one and jump to the next one. And we're just constantly chasing new leads. And I think if I was going back in time and I was recommending things to a solopreneur, like they didn't have a team, is, hey man, go to your city, pull your list, whatever the size is you're going to pull, 5,000 or 10,000, whatever. Let's say it's 10,000. Like get through that list.
Beat that list to death.
Beat the list to death.
Weird. I knew it. Yep.
Crush the list. Follow up on that list.
Because they're already leads. Sorry, I keep interrupting you, but go ahead. Go ahead. I know you're on it.
Well, it's like if you beat that list as hard as you possibly can for a month, right? And you're like relentless, right? It's like buy or die. Like you're getting after these sellers. Like your chances on a list that big of closing a deal, or at least getting really close, are super high. That's a pretty big population if you're pursuing them really hard and are aggressive. So like, dude, if you're just starting out, get that deal done. You stick in that market, pick one where you have a high chance of success, aka tired landlord, like we talked about before, and get that deal done, right? And then, if you're still crushing that list, continue to pound it, and then move on to the next.
Yeah, no, definitely organize, keep track of who you call. And I 1000% agree. I think when we started out, we would get through a list and be so quick to jump to a new list of leads, but we still have this list of leads that is still potential. And just because we had one conversation with them and they're not interested, doesn't necessarily mean that they'll never sell us their house. So yeah, I completely agree. Even if you come back, a month later or a month and a half later and give some time or some cool down for some of those leads, I definitely think that you need to beat down the list that you have, the leads that you have before moving on to the next one. I think you'd be leaving money on the table. Like, get through that list first initially, take all the garbage out, the people who will definitely not sell you their house, get them out, minimize the list a little bit more, call again, minimize the list a little bit more. When you get it focused to like 10 or less people that you feel like you may have a chance, just keep working those people. A lot of sales is rapport. At a certain point, they're just going to start to build comfort with you if they just are on the phone with you 3, 4, 5 times. So just not to beat a dead horse, but to beat that dead list until it's dead.
It just becomes a dead horse.
Yeah.
It's also like, it's unlikely when you first start out, if you're doing direct to seller marketing, that you're going to be awesome at follow up.
Right.
Or you're going to be even close to having your, what we call drip campaigns automated, right? Yeah. Unless you use a tool that has an out of the box solution, which some do, but most people are not good at it, right?
You have to like manually kind of manage your drip.
Right. So it's like the first thing you're probably going to get good at is initial contact with sellers and like your initial marketing, right? Your initial outbound marketing. If that's what you're doing, you're going to get best at that first, right?
Right.
So like if you constantly, but the problem is if you constantly skip markets and jump through markets, then you only end up getting good at that. Like you kind of like you create a system where it's very easy to forget about follow up, which was one of our mistakes. It's actually fortunate we were able to generate as much revenue as we did, pretty much completely screwing that up. But yeah.
Yeah, no, because to that point, when I was in acquisitions, like if you have a next list of leads that you're going to call, it will definitely affect your ability to follow up with the previous list. Because I know, like, we work through a list and we have drip, but in my head, I'm like, but I have these Colorado Springs leads that I still need to call. So if you have those leads like on deck, it's going to affect like, your desire to want to follow through, because you're going to feel overwhelmed. You just feel like you just have all these more leads sitting on the table. So do yourself a favor. Don't give yourself those leads yet. Like, don't overwhelm yourself. Like, beat the list to death, like we keep saying. But you could just see if you get that next list ready, you'll start thinking about it and start thinking about, I still need to call those.
Yeah, Shani,
don't even put those in your mind yet. Just focus on the list you have.
Well, there's a lot of the as wholesalers scale. Some of them, like Tyler, who was on our podcast Tuesday, said Tyler from Nick Perry's team. He said they have someone that only does follow up.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the right answer. Once I heard them say that, I was like, that's definitely the thing to do. Once
right. You're going to throw money at what's important. So they felt like follow-up was important enough to pay somebody to full-time manage and call that drip list. So like that alone should tell you it is important.
So I agree. So question for you, now that you're in Dispo, the cash buyers in what's your favorite market in terms of just talking to cash buyers, the friendliest market, and then the people that are the most difficult to deal with? What city is the toughest cash buyer?
Man, this is kind of unfair because it's just like my opinion, obviously.
Yeah.
No real truth to this, but I would say kind of like El Paso, a lot of the Texas markets, like Central or West, I guess, for El Paso. El Paso's been good, Killeen, I guess, is Copper's Cove considered Central or East?
Well, it's clean, it's the same.
So yeah, that Bell County and El Paso have been good. We have a lot of cash buyers there. Even the ones that are kind of in, we have our own network, which is pretty big. Guys who went to West Point, guys who are military, just people that we're connected to. But even outside of that, there's so many other wholesalers and real estate investors in the Bell County area and in El Paso. I would say I've definitely had the pleasure of meeting a lot of them and establishing relationships with them, which has been good. So I would say like Bell County, Texas area has been really good for us in terms of relationships and the cash buyers. The other part of your question, which I feel weird, is like, I feel like this is where I meet like the weirder investors, I guess. Like when I talk to the investors from Texas, like they like kind of get it. They get our process. Like we're talking the same language. But when I start to talk to some investors on the East Coast, like sometimes in Fayetteville, like random investors in Columbia, South Carolina, or Savannah, Georgia, like I feel like I run into a lot of just like solopreneurs who are just kind of doing things on their own, and they don't know what they're doing half the time, or like don't know what questions to ask, or I'm asking them questions and they're not really sure. I feel like those investors, I get more on like the East Coast. I don't know why. And maybe that's just my perception. It's probably not true, but I would say I have a much more pleasant experience meeting, building rapport, selling deals to investors in Texas, but in like South Carolina, not so much Fayetteville. Fayetteville has a lot. I've spoken to some odd investors in Fayetteville, but I would say like South Carolina, Savannah, Georgia, just kind of maybe.
I asked you, you know, where have you had the most difficulty? I felt like you didn't want to answer, but instead of picking one city, you just attacked the entire Eastern Seaboard.
Yeah.
I
live in the East Coast, so like I get it. I don't know, like, you know, I will say sometimes in Texas, see, it's different with the dispositions and acquisition side. Like when I was on acquisitions, I would almost say the opposite. Like I dealt with more rude people in Texas, and I dealt with like more nicer people in like the East Coast. Again, maybe that's just my own perception, but when I think back on it, that's kind of the experience that I've had.
I wonder what the cultural implication is there. I was going to pretend to try to figure it out, but No,
I don't know. Like, and also in Texas, I just feel like more of the people I talk to are part of like a business, or, you know, working for someone, or part of some branch of something else. So they're just part of like a larger team. So maybe that's why they kind of know what's going on, or they're just more in tune to what's going on. And again, a lot of the investors that I talk to on the East Coast just seem like they're kind of running their own show.
Mm-hmm. The one other benefit of Texas is there's also, as a lot of people know, so many wealthy people in California toss money at Texas. Like even Colleen.
Right.
Even Colleen, there's so many people from California that are on our buyers list that are all in that like little city, and it's bizarre. Like when you first start operating there, you're like, wait, why is these properties owned by a random dentist in California?
Yep.
That just is the way it is. It's the way the market operates. So what I'll ask you, man, where would you park your money, right? Let's say recession, you know, no more stonks, right? Like GME, stonks, the whole market starts tanking. And a lot of people will probably flock to real estate for safety. Where would you park your money? What market?
You know, I like places like Texas and Pensacola, you know, or like Florida is.
Texas is big. You got to go more niche than Texas.
More niche than Texas. Like I mentioned it before, but like, you know, Tyler, Texas, College Station. These are some of the newer markets we're operating in, where I feel like maybe they're not as busy as like the Bell County properties. Mm-hmm. So I like Tyler because like I said, it doesn't seem like it's as busy. But I'm definitely meeting a lot of investors in Tyler. So Tyler's been good. But again, like Florida, I think of where I want to park my money. You know, I think of what we talked about with population, job growth. I feel like those things are positive in Florida. Then, I mean, call me basic, but you know, weather is something that plays a part too for me. Is like I'd rather be somewhere warm like Texas or Florida as opposed to a market like New York or New Jersey.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, population is moving there. The Texas Triangle, right? You got like the, you know, Dallas, Austin, Houston triangle that you can draw on a map, like any, well, including San Antonio too. Anything that fits in that area is, you know, a decent chance it'll succeed. So like if I had to draw a little shape around one part of the country, that's if I wanted to park money and feel like, hey, if I come back in a few years, this money will be worth more than the money I dropped off. Right. That's where I would drop it.
Yeah.
I'm agreeing with you to a certain extent.
And you know, anywhere where there's like a major business coming in, you know, I live in the Washington, D.C. area. So I wouldn't necessarily say here, but a good example would be like Amazon is coming to D.C. So, you know, the prices around are going to skyrocket. So like if there was an Amazon going to Pensacola, Florida, like that would be one of the main places where I would try to look at.
Yeah.
And then I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but like there's some Tesla factories in Texas now, and that's part of what's causing the.
North Austin's got Tesla and Apple dumping jobs into there. So yeah, it's definitely good. But I mean, Austin has $600,000 houses in the burbs though. Plus, normal houses.
Yeah, right.
Like there's mansions, of course, like every city.
But it's like normal homes.
Yeah, you see in New York to a certain extent.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, I forgot to prompt everybody. We're about to close up. We got to get like Carlo, get outside. He hasn't been outside yet with the good weather. But give this video a like, give it a share. Helps out our company. Hopefully we're adding value through the content, and you share it and someone else gets some value out of the things we're saying. But Carlo, you got any parting words before I end the broadcast?
Yeah, just this sounds really basic, but this is something that I was thinking of for people who are getting in new to real estate. Is picking a market needs to be part of your process where you really take it serious and analyze it. It's not one of those things where you just throw some cities on a dartboard and just throw a dart and just pick one, or just think of like, oh, this is near my house. Doing real estate near your house doesn't necessarily mean that's the right answer. So I would just say picking the market. If you're starting out, picking the market that you're going to start in, make that part of your process, as in you need to give it as much attention and analyzing as you do any other part of your business. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I love it, man. Thanks everybody who listened in, and we'll see you next Thursday. Peace. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.